All right, so again, good evening and thank you for attending tonight. So the goal of tonight's meeting here for the first half hour is to address some really specific and important points for our 8th grade parents and who have children transitioning into 9th grade, because this can kind of be, there's only a couple transitions that your children make in school, particularly here at Avongrove. It's really like 2nd or 3rd grade, they're making a transition, and then it's 6th grade to middle school, and then the big one, other than maybe kindergarten to 1st grade, is 8th grade to 9th grade. And in 8th grade to 9th grade is where parents see some of the dynamics of school, some of the expectations of school, some of the structures of school sort of shift away from what was originally in our elementary program, more mastery-based learning, and you move into a more traditional high school that's based on curriculum and finals and midterms and credits and GPAs and transcripts, and it really shifts towards more of a focus about college and career planning. So for the next like 15-20 minutes, I just wanted to get an ear of all of our 8th grade parents so that we can talk about some really important things to hone in on and make sure that you understand and that your students understand as they're making this transition from our current 8th grade program and into 9th grade. So I always like to start our meetings with our mission and vision, because it really drives our conversations and what we talk about and why we do what we do and why we're here for your kids. And really, I think they're important things that you can take into your home when you're having these academic and social conversations with your students around their sort of identity and what they're doing in school. So our mission is, again, to inspire passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time. It's something that we read every day on the announcements. We read at the beginning of all of our meetings. And it's something that all of our administration, our teachers, our counselors, our support staff try to embody. And we really try to push that onto our students to make sure that they understand why we are here as a school and what our purpose is. And our vision is to be an accepting community that unlocks every student's ability to discover and reach their full potential. An important aspect of us as a charter school is that all of you as parents choose us. You've gone through sometimes a lengthy waiting process to be able to get into our school. And you all have something in common. And what's important is that you've looked at the educational landscape and options that you have as a resident of Pennsylvania and of Chester County. And you found something that you believe is working for your child. And we appreciate that. We appreciate all of our parents for choosing us. And I think it's important that we reiterate regularly that as much as we're a school, and I say this, we're also in the customer service business to make sure that we are providing the best educational option for your children so that you continue to choose us. And that's really what drives our mission and vision. But also, as we're talking about this transition from middle school to high school, one of the most important things, and that should really be at the center of all the conversations that we're having with your kids as the school, and that you should be having with your children at home, is about having high expectations. We have high expectations for your students. We try to make sure that we look at every child individually and that we're crafting programs and coursework and pathways and post-secondary planning that's individualized to your child's strengths and desires and goals and dreams. But it really starts with having conversations around having high expectations. And our teachers hold our students to high expectations. We hold our teachers and our staff to high expectations. And we really want to continue to impress upon our parents that high expectations should be at the center of all of our academic and social conversations with our students here at Avongrove Charter School. And that doesn't mean meeting some arbitrary bar that's set, but really what are high expectations for your individual students. And that can differ, but making sure that our kids are motivated and striving to reach their full potential, it goes back to our vision. So this is a slide we're going to talk about again after 7 o'clock, but I think it's important to make sure that when you're going through this scheduling process, and this is new for 8th grade parents and 8th grade students going into 9th grade, and when you're looking at course selection and we're looking at levels and of courses, that you have a conversation with your children about what are their abilities, what are their interests, what are their goals, and then also understanding what are the school's requirements for graduation. And we're going to talk about that later. But those are really the 4 important things to discuss with your kids and address really every year now as they're making grade level transitions, revisiting, okay, what are we good at? What are our strengths? What are we interested in? What are our post-secondary goals? For what do we want to do after school? What are the school's requirements? And how can we build sort of a course program that's made up of both our courses and student activities to meet your child's interests and needs. So there's some important things that 8th grade parents really should understand as kids make this transition. And we put together sort of a very simple side-by-side chart of like what happens in middle school and then what happens in high school. So in middle school, all our kids get report cards. But when you're in high school, you not only get a report card, but you're getting a cumulative GPA that begins when your child starts into 9th grade. And then the coursework that they engage in and they complete starts to build their high school transcript. And it's that high school transcript that gets sent to post-secondary institutions, whether it's 2 or 4 years college, trade schools. Some employers even ask for that along with the diploma. So that it's kind of more of a package deal between marking period report cards and yearly report cards that track progress over time, GPA that starts to become a cumulative average of final grades throughout high school, and then the really important piece of paper being that transcript, which is almost like an executive summary of everything that your child has done throughout high school. In middle school, students pass classes. Sometimes they don't pass classes, and they sort of move on to the next course in the sequence of classes. After 7th grade, we move on to 8th grade. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's socially promoting, but students sort of progress through grade levels on a year-to-year basis. What happens in high school, though, it's you take a class, you have to pass the class to earn credit. And earning credits is what moves you through grade level or promoting you from 9th grade to 10th grade, 10th grade to 11th grade. And we're going to talk about those requirements later this evening. And it's the accumulation of credits that make you eligible for graduation. Starting with the class of 2023, which is this year's 10th graders, students must also pass the Keystone Exams or an alternate pathway, which we're going to talk about later, in order to be eligible for graduation. And they must complete a college and career readiness portfolio with Avon Grove Charter School. So there's a couple different things that students need to do to progress through grade levels and progress through course sequences, as well as make themselves eligible for graduation. So, and again, we're going to talk about that, some of these aspects in a little bit more detail later this evening. In middle school, there's sometimes a chance that you may not have been successful in a certain course, but you still move on to the next grade level. So if I'm in 7th grade and I have a really tough time with 7th grade math, but I pass all my other classes, I'm going to move on to 8th grade. And I'll probably move on to 8th grade math with some remedial intervention support, either happening in 8th grade or over the summer. What happens in high school is if you don't successfully complete the course, you end up having to retake it. You don't just, if you take Algebra 1 and you don't pass it, you don't move on to Algebra 2. You either retake Algebra 1 or you have to go into summer school, but it's successfully passing and meeting locally established grade requirements in courses that allow you to move on in the sequence of classes. And it's not uncommon that we have students who are and have courses that are multi-grade level, where a student might be taking what's typically a an 11th grader might be taking 11th grade English, 11th grade social studies, but what's typically a 10th grade math class, because they might not have passed the math class the previous year. So you start to see a much more multi-grade level coursework and class demographics in high school classes. In middle school, the grades that you get, the choices that you make, really only affect options that are going to be available to you in high school. However, the courses that you take and the choices that you make in high school start to reflect or and affect future post-secondary options and life after high school. So like this is the bookend. Middle school is kind of like the middle. You know, you have high school that you're looking forward to. What happens in middle school is going to affect high school, but what happens in high school is going to affect sort of the rest of that story afterwards. And then in middle school students take classes and they take specials that are sort of required. All 7th grade, all 8th grade graders take generally the same classes. It's kind of a package deal. But once you get to high school, there are requirements, and we're going to talk about those, but then students have a lot more options with regards to elective classes and clubs and activities that they're able to get involved in and expand on some of their interests. So making the middle school to 9th grade course level transition, this is just one example of our history classes. So in 9th grade, our students take World History 1. And this is sort of a breakdown of the different levels that are available and what typically happens. So in middle school, we have, we have core classes, we have grade level classes, we have enriched classes in some respects, and we have CAP classes. Students who are in core level classes, core English, typically will go into the content level class in high school, or potentially move up into a college prep level. Usually students in 8th grade history move into college prep world history. Some students who are in enriched level classes can go on to honors. However, the majority of them stay in college prep. And our students who are typically in CAP classes enter our honors course track in 9th grade. There is some fluidity to these things, and it's not an all or nothing. Some students take, an honors history class and a college prep English class, and are a year ahead in math and take a college prep biology class. So it's not an all or nothing package deal. We start to try to really look at the individual student and what their strengths are and what their interests lie in building what is a strong high school transcript to help support them in any post-secondary option, that an idea that they want to move forward to. But I think that what we really take away from this slide is that particularly in math and in English, in middle school, we really have 4 course levels: core, grade level, enriched, and CAP. History probably wasn't the best example for this here. But when you move into 9th grade, it really moves down to 3 levels: our general content level classes, college prep, and then honors. And then once students get to 10th grade, advanced placement courses start to become available to them. In 9th grade, we follow a typical 8-period schedule, just like your students do in 8th grade. Typically, the max amount of credits that a 9th grader can take is 7. Most take 6, but it is possible to take 7, and they typically makes up of an English class, a social studies class, a math class, a science class, and some of the science classes do have a lab period attached to it, a world language course, and then typically 1 or 2 electives. The lab-based science classes in 9th grade is our honors biology and college prep biology courses. And if a student enrolls in either of these 2 classes, they get a concurrent study hall period attached to it. However, the students can drop that study hall and take extra electives that are Performing and Visual Arts department and our electives teachers have deemed appropriate for students who would only attend 5 of 6 days. So basically what happens is those labs, you might have biology first period every day, but on B days during second period, you have your biology lab. So you would have a 90-minute biology lab on B days. And then on A, C, D, E, and F, you would have a study hall, or if you didn't want to take a study hall, students can pick up another elective to gain more credits in 9th grade. But that's a really sort of generic, typical 9th grade schedule. Schedules are a little bit more constrictive in 9th grade, and then as students meet different graduation requirements, it opens up spots in their schedule for more flexibility as they move into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And then this is a big one, and I'm going to talk about it again as a reminder to our 9th and 10th graders. But it's something to make sure that our 8th grade parents are aware of. That our board passed, it was probably 2 years ago now. It all runs together. But that beginning with the class of 2023, graduation requirements, so the credits that you need in order to accumulate in order to graduate, would only be fulfilled by courses completed in grades 9 through 12. So that means that high school courses that were completed in middle school, that could be a world language course taken as an 8th grader, or maybe a math class if we have 7th or 8th graders coming up and taking algebra 2 or honors geometry in the high school. That courses completed while middle school would be included on a student's transcript and would contribute to their GPA. However, they would not be credit earning courses towards our graduation requirements. And I'm going to talk about, I have a couple minutes. So what we're trying to do is we've had in the past students who took, and this happens particularly in world language classes, where we had students take, say, Spanish 1 in 8th grade, Spanish 2 in 9th grade, and most colleges and universities are looking for 2 years of consecutive language courses in order to be eligible for their enrollment. And what we started to see is some schools, University of Delaware is a good example, said that they would not admit a student. So these students were not getting into, say, the University of Delaware because the University of Delaware did not recognize that 8th grade language as meeting their enrollment admissions requirements. So we had seniors who were, set on going to the University of Delaware who were getting denied because they took their 2 years of language early and then stopped and didn't progress through the language sequence, and then did not meet their admissions requirements. So our board passed this policy to try to anticipate those issues, and we started to see it in more and more as colleges get a little bit more wary about their enrollment requirements and tuition, that they weren't accepting work that was completed in middle school for their admissions, even though it was at the high school level. And I'm going to talk about it again with the larger group, but it's something to keep in mind. So we're still going to recognize students who accelerated in middle school and took those classes. We're going to list them on transcripts so colleges see that a 8th grader took high school honors geometry, and we're going to include that in their GPA to help their GPA, but it won't count as for example, one of the 3 math credits that a student needs in order to graduate. We would still anticipate and require that student to take 3 math classes in grades 9 through 12. So those are the couple things that I wanted to hit upon that are really specific to the 8th to 9th grade transition, and are points to really reflect on and let sit in and talk again with your kids about. The courses that what we can do, how this is different, and what coursework was taken during middle school and how that may affect their course selection that's coming up here at the end of the month. I know you have probably a lot of questions, and of things about Keystone Exams and graduation requirements and online courses and dual enrollment and all of that. And we're going to talk about that this evening here after 7 o'clock. But I'm going to open it up for a couple minutes where I'm going to turn the ability for you to submit questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer a couple here in the next 3 or 4 minutes before 7 o'clock, when we expect current 9th, 10th, and 11th grade parents to start to come in. So a question came back: do they offer a math lab and lit lab, and is Spanish 3 offered? So so in high school, if there are support math classes, I think this might be a question that might be specific to your child, but we do offer some support math classes. We offer intervention in high school. We offer a foundations of high school mathematics class for students who have IEPs or receive special ed services, who might need additional building block math concepts before moving into high school math. But there is support available to students who may need it. We also have tutoring services at the high school that our National Honor Society students run. So we try to make sure that we provide both reading and math support as much as possible when needed. So is Spanish 3 offered? We do offer Spanish 3. We actually offer up through AP Spanish. So that would be Spanish 4, and then AP Spanish, which would be Spanish 5. And we are going to talk a little bit about languages a little bit later. The question was, why would a student want to take an extra electives in 9th grade instead of a study hall? Will it open something up in 11th and 12th grade? So the short answer is yes, and it's really student specific. So there are many students who really do need an open period in their day to try to get homework done, to get things accomplished, to get organized, to just have that mental break. And then there's some students who don't really want that break, and they want to accumulate as many credits early as possible so that I have some more flexibility with my schedule in 11th or 12th grade. We do have a minimum amount of credits that students need to take every year. But what happens is, as you start to get some of your requirements out of the way, say health, every student has to take health in high school. And if students are able to take that early, that means that sort of singleton restrictive class is out of the way. So it doesn't get in the way of something else that they might want to take later on. So I'll use the health example. Say a student doesn't take health early, and when they get to 11th grade, they finally have to take health. But health is scheduled at the same time as fiber arts. And the student really wants to take fiber arts, but they can't then because they have to take that health class. And they could have, in lieu of a study hall in 9th grade, taken health and had that been sort of, the box been checked. But it really is a student by student situation, based on whether or not you believe a student might benefit more from having some open time in their day to get organized and get some work done. Will any sports be offered next year in 9th grade? Yes. So you can get our athletic on the website and our athletics department. We have fall, winter, and now spring sports with girls and boys sports in all seasons. But you can see that breakdown of sports by season on the athletics site on our website. So again, I got probably another minute or two before I'm going to let a number of the 9th through 11th grade parents in and move into sort of the longer part of this evening's presentation. All right, well, I appreciate all the 8th grade parents who came a little bit early so that we could cover a couple of those things. And I am going to admit the rest of the 9th through 11th grade parents, and then we'll get started on the rest of the presentation. Mr. McGregor, I'm going to talk about sort of the process of teacher recommendations coming up in the next portion of this evening. So I will answer your question. All right, good evening, everybody who just joined us for the start of the 7 o'clock hour. Just so that you're aware, we did have a short meeting that went over just a few things with our current 8th grade parents who have children moving up to 9th grade. And again, I appreciate all of our 8th grade parents who came a little bit early. But 7 o'clock tonight really starts sort of the more intense overview of our high school course selection process. This evening's goals, I'm going to try to cover really everything A to Z about high school, from GPA to transcripts to Keystone exams to alternate pathways to dual enrollment to early release for our seniors. So I'm going to run the gambit tonight. I am live streaming this to YouTube, so there will be a recording of this evening's presentation. So don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes. I will also be posting this presentation, the slide deck, to the school's website, so that you'll have everything that you see on the slides, you'll also have available to you. Like I did with our 8th grade parents, I always like to start our meetings, particularly when it has to do with our students and our school programs, with revisiting our mission and vision. Our mission is to inspire passion for lifelong learning, one student at a time. This is a mission that we developed and tweaked about 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it really speaks to our identity as a school and answers that big overarching question of why does Avon Grove Charter School exist, and why are we around? And our vision is to be an accepting community that unlocks every student's ability to discover and reach their full potential. And 8th grade parents, I know you heard this already, but really I think one of the most important themes that I think and that we can convey to our students, whether you're an 8th grade parent with a new high school kid coming in, or you're an 11th grade parent that's going to have a senior next year, it's about having high expectations. Our school has high expectations for your kids, and our school, our administration has high expectations of our staff and of our teachers, and you should have high expectations of our school. And I think that if we can all come through that lens, that we are trying very, very hard to tailor programs and meet the needs of every one of your kids in an as individualized way as possible, and that every student's an individual, and every student's definition or of what those high expectations are for Johnny are not necessarily the same for Sally. But if we can all set out and have that conversation about meeting goals and meeting those high expectations that we have, then when our kids are walking across that stage at graduation time, we can look at them as they walk across the stage and say, we're really partners in this, parents in the school, and that we've done everything that we can to prepare your kids and our students for life and success after high school, no matter what that looks like. And it does look different for every student. Every year I share this, and I think it's important because I think that it's a conversation that really needs to be had every year with kids, particularly kids who go through the amount of change from, over a school year, and then it feels like it speeds up on how much they change between, the last day of school and the first day of school from grade level to grade level. But it's important to make sure that we're having conversations with our students and with your children about what are their abilities and what are their strengths, what are their interests, what are their goals, and these things change. They're fluid and amiable throughout time. And then what are the school's requirements for graduation, and how do we evaluate all of those four things to build course catalogs, curriculum, student activities, athletics, and opportunities where your students are going to be able to shine and like I said, of what our vision statement really means, reach their full potential. So I always find it helpful to start with the end in mind, because I think it's important to understand sort of what the finish line looks like. This is a 50,000-foot view of the finish line, and we're going to get into the specifics of all of these things. But I think it's important to understand what the finish line looks like and then kind of work backwards. So graduation requirements for our class of 2022. So that's our current 11th graders. There's two things that our current 11th graders really need to focus on. The first one is attaining the correct amount of credits in each discipline area in order to be eligible for graduation, as well as the supplemental requirement of their community service hours. And that's 15 hours of community service for every year that the student was enrolled at Avon Grove Charter School. So that's prorated based on when you start with us as a high schooler. I will tell you, that every year at graduation time, and this is specifically to our current 11th grade parents, every year at graduation time, the administration has to make calls to parents to tell them that their child's most likely not going to be able to participate in graduation because they didn't do their community service hours. And that, in all honesty, is not a fun conversation that we have to have. The community service hours is typically something that kids procrastinate on or don't pay attention to, no matter how many times we remind them throughout their 4 years of high school. So if you have an 11th grader right now, if nothing else happens after this meeting, knock on their bedroom door and ask them how many community service hours they've done over the last 3 years. Because they need to, most likely, if they started with us as 9th graders, have 60 done by the end of next school year in order to participate in their graduation ceremony. Please have that conversation with your students. We remind them regularly. And I think it's one of those situations where roles are reversed a little bit, and it's the school telling, we're kind of like mom and dad in that situation where kids don't always listen to mom and dad. And no matter how many times we tell them that they need to do their community service hours in order to be able to participate in graduation, they don't always take us seriously. And it might be helpful for actual mom and dad to have that conversation with them. So really important for our current 11th graders. For our 10th graders and beyond, so the class of 2023 is our 10th graders and everybody beyond that, there's three things that your children must do in order to graduate. One is attaining the correct amount of credits in each given discipline, and we're going to talk about that. They must pass the Keystone exams or be eligible through an alternative pathway. And we're going to talk about that. That was originally supposed to be the class of 2022, but the Pennsylvania legislature kicked the can down the road again to the class of 2023. And then students must complete a college and career culminating portfolio that includes a work-based learning experience. And we're going to talk about that too. And that culminating portfolio is also something that we talk to about with your kids, both 10th graders and 9th graders over the last year or so. So what are the credit requirements? So each Avangrid charter school student must earn a minimum of 23 credits in order to graduate. That's a minimum. That's not what we're striving for. That's not what we really want to see all of our students end with, but it's a minimum of credits that they need in order to graduate. Students in grades 9 through 11 must schedule a minimum of 6 credits each academic year, and students in 12th grade must schedule a minimum of 5 credits. So that gets you to your 23. You can take more, but not less. And really that mostly comes into play the students in our senior year. We have students who get to their senior year, they might have taken 7 credits in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. They've got 21 credits. They only need 23 to graduate, and they only want to come to school for like 1 period of day. And that doesn't really work. So while taking a lot of credits early is good, 23 is the minimum amount of credits. The more credits you have, you're bolstering that high school transcript for post-secondary admissions officers. But we require 9th through 11th graders to take 6 credits, and students in 12th grade to take 5. And then you can see at the table on the right, there's specific amounts of credits in each discipline area that must be attained as a minimum. So students have to have 4 credits of English, 4 credits of social studies, 3 credits of math, 3 credits of science, 4 credits of arts and humanities. That includes world languages. So that is our performing and visual arts department, our world languages, and some of our social studies electives count as humanity credits. Students have to take 1 health class. Students have to take 1 PE class, and then they have a minimum of 4 elective credits that they must obtain. And that can be in any of the disciplines. So I did go over this with our 8th grade parents as information moving forward, and it's something that's important to reiterate to our high school parents, that our board passed, again, I believe it was 2 years ago, that beginning with the class of 2023, so that is our current 10th grade parents, our students, at graduation requirements. These graduation requirements of 23 credits and all the specifics by required course area there can only be fulfilled by courses completed in grades 9 through 12. So that means that students who are in middle school that come up and take high school classes, those courses, we will include them on a student's high school transcript so that college admissions officers, those secondary institutions, employers that might be interested in seeing a transcript, that they see that our middle schoolers might have come up and taken advanced classes. And they will contribute to help a student's cumulative GPA. However, they will not be credit earning courses towards these graduation requirements. We highly recommend that the graduating class of 2022 review their transcripts and try to adhere to these guidelines. However, it's not required as part of our graduation requirements. And I'm going to explain the story again because I think it's important to reiterate. What we started to see a couple years ago was that we had students who were being denied admission to colleges because colleges were looking at students' transcripts and only looking at classes from 9th through 12th grade, and were not recognizing classes, high school classes that were taken in middle school. And one particular example that happened was in world languages. So most colleges and universities require 2 years of the same language in order to be eligible for admission. And we had many students who took, for example, Spanish 1 in 8th grade and Spanish 2 in 9th grade, and then stopped taking Spanish because they heard most colleges accept or require 2 years of the same language. So they took 2 years of the same language and then they stopped. And then they applied to schools. And when they applied to schools, they got their not accepted letters, and they were denied because the Spanish 1 class that the students took in 8th grade was not recognized by the institution of higher ed. And every college is different. And every college's admissions process is different. But what we wanted to do was try to mitigate the risk that we were having, and ensuring that we weren't closing doors on students' goals or their post-secondary aspirations because of decisions that were being made in 8th grade without potentially knowing where they were going to be applying, 4 or 5 years later. So this is an important aspect that starts with this year's 10th graders regarding their graduation requirements for credits. So as we talk about credits, we talked a little bit about how you have to earn credits to move forward. By taking classes, passing classes, and earning the credits, you will be promoted from grade level to grade level, and then eventually be eligible for graduation. So to be promoted from 9th grade to 10th grade, students must earn 5.5 credits. From 10th to 11th, 11.5 credits. From 11th to 12th grade, 17.5 credits. And then a 12th grader would be eligible for graduation with a minimum of 23. We do have some students who repeat, and if you could see if my camera was on, you would see me doing air quotes, the grade level, or might be a retained 9th grader because they might not earn the 5.5 to be moving on or be listed as a 10th grader. We do some mid-year promotions. We do some double grade jumps for transcripts. We try to get creative, but students need to earn the correct amount of credits in order to be promoted to the next grade level. Now, if I'm a 9th grader and I take Algebra 1 and I pass Algebra 1, but I don't earn 5.5 credits, the following year I might be listed as a 9th grader again because I don't have 5.5 credits to move on to 10th grade. But that doesn't mean that I would repeat Algebra 1. You wouldn't repeat classes that you actually earned credit for. You would repeat classes that you failed and didn't earn credit for, but not the ones that you did. Again, I kind of touched upon the community service requirement for this year's 11th graders. That community service requirement goes away with our 10th grade class and switches to our culminating portfolio requirement, which I'm going to talk about. But I'll reiterate at this point the importance of our current 11th grade parents to have a conversation with their kids about their community service hours, because it is a requirement in order to participate in the graduation ceremonies. Okay, Keystone exams. So starting with the class of 2023, all students must score a proficient or advanced score on the Algebra 1 biology and literature Keystone exams, or meet specific requirements via alternative pathway routes in order to be eligible for graduation. So this is that second point that students need to complete in order to be eligible for graduation, starting with the class of 2023, which is this year's 10th graders. We give students multiple opportunities to demonstrate proficiency, and we do provide remediation and asynchronous remedial support in preparation to retest. However, it's not required, it is optional. So this is important for our parents who had, whether you're a 9th grade or a 10th grade parent, or even 9th grade or 10th grade parent, or even a middle school parent who may have had a student complete Algebra 1 last year. So because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and because the schools were unable to administer the Keystone exams last year, the legislature passed Act 136 in the fall. And the important provision of Act 136 that has directly to deal with the Keystone exams says that for the 2019-2020 school year, so for last year, any student who completed a course in an academic content area associated with the Keystone exam shall not be required to take the Keystone exam related to that course and shall be deemed proficient, provided that they demonstrate successful completion of the locally established grade-based requirements for the academic content areas associated in each content area exam. What that boils down to is that if you had a child in a Keystone exam trigger class last year, Algebra 1, concepts of Algebra B, 10th grade literature, or biology, if they were in those classes last year and they passed the class, they automatically get a proficient score for the Keystone exams in relation to their graduation requirements. However, what's important is that the Department of Ed did not give those students a numerical score. So each time a student takes a Keystone exam, they not only get a below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced school category score, they get a numerical score. Students who fall in this boat did not get a numerical score. They just got the category scoring of proficient. So because no numerical score was given to these exams, these students are not eligible for the composite score pathway, which I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes. So keep that in mind, and I'll revisit it in a second. Students who were enrolled in these classes last year but did not pass will be required to take the Keystone exams this year. And right now, we are still required now to administer the PSSAs and the Keystone exams this year. The U.S. Department of Education did not grant states waivers from their federally mandated tests. And that's a U.S. Department of Education issue. And then we're going to continue to provide opportunities for retesting if students desire. So when do students take these exams? This information was on the previous slide, but important to reiterate. In algebra, we have our CAP Algebra 1 students, Algebra 1, and concepts of Algebra B. Those are our algebra Keystone exam trigger classes. And if a student is enrolled in those classes, they take the Keystone exam at the end of that class. If your student gets to the end of 11th grade and still has not taken any of those classes, they're required through federal participation requirements to take the Keystone exam, even if they haven't taken the class. I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but that's the way the law was written. For biology Keystone exam, it's typically our 9th graders when they enroll in biology, or again, any 11th grader who has not taken biology, they must take the biology Keystone exam at the end of their 11th grade year. And for literature, it's usually our 10th grade students in their world literature class. They take the Keystone exam at the end of that course, or all 11th graders if they haven't taken our world literature class. They're sort of out of sequence. And then student scores are banked until their 11th grade year. And like I said, if students are proficient prior to their 11th grade year, they will not need to take the exam again during their 11th grade year. So after many years of debate in the legislature, They passed a couple of years ago what's called Act 158, which provided different pathways to meet state graduation requirements. And this now begins with the class of 2023. So we talked about credits that students need to obtain in order to be eligible for graduation. And then students must do one of the following in order to meet their Keystone exam requirement to be eligible for graduation. One is score proficient or advanced on all 3 exams. That's our goal. However, finally, the legislature realized that not every student is going to be able to do that. So what Act 158 does is it provides 4 alternative pathways that students can go through or meet in order to still be eligible for graduation and deemed proficient in terms of the Keystone exams. The first pathway, if a student does not score proficient on all 3 exams, is that they could meet a composite score. And the composite score is 4,452 across all 3 Keystone exams. And performance must include at least 1 proficient and 2 basic test scores. So if a student scores below basic on any 3 of the Keystone exams, they would not be eligible for Pathway 1. This is that pathway that I said it was important to note that students who were in the Keystone exam courses last year and received that proficient score because they passed the class but didn't take the Keystone exam, because they were not given a numerical score, they're not eligible for this composite score average. They weren't given a numerical score for that Keystone exam, so there's no way to calculate a composite score. I don't know why the state did that, but as of right now, they have not assigned those students numerical scores, just the categorical score of proficient. Pathway 2 is that a student meets the local grade requirements in the Keystone exam or on the Keystone exam course, so passing the class, and is able to provide evidence of one of the following. A proficient advanced placement score, which is typically a 3 in the content area. That typically doesn't happen. You typically don't have a student not pass the biology Keystone exam, but go on to take AP biology and get a 3 on the AP exam. So that typically doesn't happen, but it is an option. Gain a specific SAT, PSAT, or ACT score, which is developed and recommended by the Department of Ed. That's an important one and an important gateway that students can obtain, because we pay for every one of our students in Ms. Basile, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 10th and 11th grade to, is that one right? 10th and 11th grade?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. 10th and 11th grade to take the PSATs. So we pay for your students to take the PSATs. And if they're not proficient on all the exams, they don't meet the composite score average, as long as they participate in the PSATs and they reach a specific cut score, they'd be eligible for graduation. There's a specific cut score for the SATs, and there's a specific cut score for the ACTs that they can meet. There's a cut score for the ASVAB exam, which is what the military used to use for their entry requirements. Students could provide evidence of enrollment in a 4-year institution of higher education, or take the ACT Work Keys exam and get a gold score. So you can see that like Pathway 2 is really test driven again. Getting particular scores on other types of assessments that we as a school administer that shows that a student is ready for post-secondary education or success after high school. So that's Pathway 2. Pathway 3 is for our students who attend TCHS. So if they attend TCHS and they get specific scores on their NIMS or their NOCTI exams that they take at the end of their technical school program, those students are eligible for graduation and meet Pathway 3. If they take their exams in their senior year, TCHS administration also has the ability to deem a student highly likely to be successful on their exams, and they would be eligible for graduation as well. Pathway 4 gets even a little more crazy, and this is what's called the evidence-based pathway. So students obtain all of their credits they need for graduation, but they don't score proficient on all their exams. They're not eligible for the composite score pathway. They don't meet Pathway 2, which was all of those other exam requirements. They're not a TCHS student, so they're not eligible via Pathway 3. This is their last opportunity. And they need to present and have available 3 pieces of evidence that demonstrates that they are going to be successful after high school. 1 piece must be from Tier 1, and 2 pieces must be from Tier 2, or you could do 2 pieces from Tier 1. So there's some mixing and matching that we can do, but it really has to deal with, and most students go through 1 piece from Tier 1 and 2 pieces from Tier 2. And some of these are an industry grade credential, which I'm going to talk about in a little while. Admission, so evidence of enrollment in a non-4-year nonprofit IHE. So going to maybe community college or a 2-year school. Any AP exam score, enrollment score. And then Tier 2 is a letter verifying full-time employment post-graduation, successfully completing an internship, completing a service learning project, or meeting NCAA core course compliance with a specific GPA. So again, this is some of the navigating that our guidance counselors do throughout your child's 4-year high school career on trying to make sure that we're checking boxes as they're going through, so that when they get to 12th grade, all of this is done, or a plan is in place for them to be able to say, yes, I've passed all my classes and met my graduation requirements there. I've met one of these Keystone exam pathways. And again, this starts with our current 10th graders. Our school is also evaluated on some of these things that are important. One of them being this career standards benchmark. Another being what percentage of our students are complete an industry or work-based learning experience. And then post-transition to school, military, and work. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So another thing that your students continue to participate in high school is college and career readiness artifact collection. So this is a requirement from the Department of Education and the state of Pennsylvania. And we as a school, throughout your child's K through 12 career, are required to have them engage in and collect artifactual evidence that we are exposing them to the college or the career and educational work standards, and that we're prepping them for various post-secondary options. So for example, at the end of 5th grade, we have to have our 5th graders produce 6 or more pieces of evidence. By the end of 8th grade, they have to do another 6. And one of those is an individualized career plan in 8th grade. And then by the end of 11th grade, students have to produce 8 more pieces of evidence. So that's 8 pieces of evidence in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, with 2 of them demonstrating the implementation of the career plan that your students developed in 8th grade. Again, this is a requirement we have as a school. These are the things that your children are doing during our advisory periods that we run throughout the year. Our school is also evaluated, whoops, and students, and we do want to offer these things to students. Students NOCTI scores, and we receive them from TCHS if your students enroll in a technical program. And this year and going into next year, we're actually working on aligning some of our performing and visual arts classes to industry grade credential exams, so that some of our students can leave Avon Grove Charter School with an industry grade credential, and be ready for the workforce, make themselves more marketable to post-secondary institutions, and really leave school with some honed skills. So a good example of that is, at the end of taking Photo 2, which is an elective in our high school, we're looking to have our students take the Adobe Photoshop industry credential examination, so that they can, at the end of Photo 2, be given an Adobe credential that says that they are proficient in Photoshop, and then that they can take that as, or put that on their resume, makes them more marketable when entering the workforce, or shows post-secondary institutions that they have a particular aptitude on some of these industry grade programs that we utilize throughout a student's high school career. We also look to offer and require students to do a work-based learning experience. And that can be a mix of job shadowing, an internship, or service learning projects. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So when we look back at those slides, and I'm sure that many of your heads are spinning, because that sounds like a lot. I got to have my kid pass all these classes and get all these credits. I have to have my kid somehow pass Keystone exams or navigate through one of those crazy pathways that Mr. Bruto just talked about. I need to have them have all of these artifacts for the school's future ready index requirements. So what we did a couple years ago is we said the same thing, like, this is a lot. And it's a lot of disjointed pieces that students are required to do in order to be eligible to graduate from a high school in the state of Pennsylvania. So how do we kind of bring this all together? And what we did is we developed the framework for, and the board passed our proposal a few years ago to phase out the community service, the ad hoc community service hour requirement, and implement a college and career readiness portfolio. And this is now a graduation requirement starting with our class of 2023. And so it says, beginning with the class of 2023, Avon Grove Charter School implemented a new graduation requirement focused on the development of a culminating college and career readiness portfolio. And the portfolio is required and must be completed by all AGCS students in order to be eligible for graduation, with the purpose of the portfolio being to ensure that all students graduating have explored, researched, discussed, and analyzed their future endeavors prior to graduating high school. So what we did is we took all of those pieces of credit attainment, Keystone pathways, and all the evidence that I was listing, completion of a service learning project, or participation in an internship, or a letter from an acceptance letter from college, or a specific score on the PSATs. And we developed a portfolio project that students are going to be doing throughout their years in high school to collect these things, so that it's not It's not something that students are trying to quickly throw together at the end of their senior year in order to be eligible for graduation. We want this to be an ongoing process with staff support that occurs throughout all 4 years, and that we are getting to know the students. Students are being reflective, that they're participating in more than just the 7:30 to 2:15 high school class period, that they're getting involved in activities, that they're building their high school resume, and that they're being exposed to internship and service learning opportunities to really be knowledgeable moving into their post-secondary plans. There's nothing worse than a student who goes off to college and takes on student loan debt only to find out 2 or 3 years into college that they really didn't like the decision that they made or the major that they picked. So we're trying to provide students with as many opportunities to get exposure to some of the post-secondary plans and opportunities that they're going to have, so that they're making informed decisions moving forward. So throughout, every year students participate in our college and career exploration curriculum. Our students are provided an advisor, a staff advisor, as they come into 9th grade, and they keep that advisor throughout their 4 years of high school with us. So that advisor loops with our students. It's another point of contact that they have and that they get to know well, and that staff advisor, along with our guidance counselors, can help students make informed decisions and keep up on their artifact collection and keep up on their credit attainment and make sure that they're meeting their Keystone graduation requirements as they're moving through the years, and it not be something that's being addressed, in the 11th hour of 12th grade. Here are some examples that specific grade level teachers or grade levels do. So in 9th grade, we do a lot of goal setting. They'll do learning styles inventory, trying to get to know themselves and how are they going to be successful in high school. In 10th grade, they do some career clustering information. They learn about the cost of college. They take an entrepreneurial self-assessment to see whether or not they have specific abilities and attributes and personality traits that would make them, a good entrepreneur. In 11th grade, we work on resume and cover letters. They'll start to collect letters of recommendation and references. We have them go through an interview expo. There's lots of good opportunities and activities that they'll do. And then in 12th grade, they really work on finishing up some of those artifact requirements that make them eligible for graduation through those Keystone exam pathways. Most of our 12th graders are engaged in job shadowing or internships, or they're working on service learning projects to round out sort of their high school career. I talked about this real briefly with our 8th grade parents at 6:30. This is an example of sort of the levels that we have in high school. Once students get to 10th grade, they have the ability to enroll in advanced placement classes. Again, that starts in 10th grade. And then we have honors, college prep, and then standard level content classes. So again, there's typically 4 levels of classes. Some math classes only have 2. It is really discipline specific, but you would not, it's pretty typical to see advanced placement, honors, college prep, and then standard content level course offerings across our departments. Another thing that's very important to understand, and oftentimes doesn't really get talked about that much until later on in a student's high school career, is what is a GPA. So a GPA means grade point average, and it's an important measure on your student's academic studies. So it's basically, for all intents and purposes, an average of your child's final grades in every course over every school year. Typically in high school, a student's final grade is comprised of 4 quarter grades, quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, and quarter four, all receiving a letter grade and each being worth 20% of their final grade, and then a midterm exam worth 10% and a final exam worth 10%. I will tell you that part of our high school grading and reporting strategic plan coming up is looking at this and having conversations about midterms and final exams moving forward. But as it stands now, that is how our current GPAs are calculated. To get a little bit more in the weeds, there are some classes that are weighted higher than others due to their rigor. So Avongrove Charter School operates on a standard 4.5 rank value scale. Some schools are on a 4.0 scale. Avongrove Charter School adopted many years ago a 4.5 base scale. This is what Avongrove School District uses as well. Our honors weight scale starts at a 5.0 and our AP weighted value starts at a 5.5. So I think it's important to understand GPA, and it's important to understand that GPA is one aspect of what post-secondary institutions look at when children are seeking admission into colleges and universities. It's one piece, but it's also a somewhat of a skewed piece. I think Ms. Basilio and the guidance counselors will echo this, but many colleges and universities strip out weighting of GPAs and evaluate students based on non-weighted GPA scales, because it can sometimes be difficult to compare children's GPAs from different schools in different states, sometimes different countries, when they're all looking to go to Penn State, because all schools are not on the same rank value scales. But for all intents and purposes, this is our high school grade scale, and the rank values and the weighted values that we utilize to determine students' GPAs. Going into next year, this is our AP course offerings. We offer AP Studio Art 2D Design. We will be offering AP English Literature and Composition next year. We alternate every other year between AP English Lit and AP English Language. So we offered AP English Language this year. We will offer AP English Literature next year. AP Calc, AB, AP Bio, AP Chem, AP Environmental Science, AP US, AP European History, Government and Politics, Spanish, and AP Computer Science Principles. We're always investigating ways to continue to expand our AP offerings. We do have some students who do independent studies or just sit and complete AP exams. So we do try to work with our upperclassmen students on providing them the ability and opportunity to complete advanced placement course exams that fit their interests. Another thing that's important to notice is we're a small school in comparison to many, and we have a constraining master schedule, meaning it is sometimes hard to schedule a student everything that they want and it all fit together in the puzzle piece of what a student's schedule is. It's very rare that students get a 100% completed schedule with no conflicts and that they don't have to make any hard decisions about what courses they want to take. There's one area that's particularly difficult for us to schedule. It has a little bit to do with our 8-period school day, lab-based science classes, and a lunch period that's actually a period of our day. But language classes are one area that is sometimes difficult for us to fulfill without conflict in student schedule. And without conflict is what I mean is a student might want to take Spanish 3 and Spanish 3 and honors world literature. And based on our student requests and our teacher schedules, Spanish 3 and honors world literature might be scheduled third period and at the same time. There are some times where that happens and students have to sort of make a decision on which class they wish to take. We do try to provide online language options and online course options independent of Avon Grove Charter School when conflicts arise and that they're unresolvable. We try to partner with a number of providers. We partner with Brandywine Virtual Academy, which is out of the CCIU, a school company called One Schoolhouse for a few courses, Edgenuity, which is a third-party curriculum online course provider, as well as Eduseer. So we try to partner with multiple organizations based on the classes. Not all of them offer all of the courses, so we have to have multiple ones to try to find a course provider that can pretty much offer any class that we might need if a student's scheduling conflict were to arise. So it is an option, and it's an option when there are conflicts or courses that we are unable to run, maybe based on not having a teacher in the last minute, or low course enrollment. We don't always run a course if only one student requests it, but if that student really wants to take that subject, we will try to provide a third-party online option for them. It's not an option, though, to try to free up space in a schedule for study halls or senior privilege, which I'm going to talk about. So, a student can't come to their guidance counselor and say, I really want to take online, 11th grade English so I can take an extra study hall, when that 11th grade English class at Avon Grove Charter School actually does fit in their schedule and that there's no conflict. I put this in here just because I think it's something to address and that we're still working on. So what if I'm interested in a full-time online option for the 2021-2020 school year? So as it stands as of right now, March 8th, we do not plan to offer our current hybrid program offering for next year. So the opportunity for a 2-day-a-week in-person instructional model and then virtual 3 days a week, we do not plan to offer next year. We also do not plan to offer our current concurrent remote learning option. And what that means is the option where you have students remote, zooming in or remoting into existing classes that are happening in person at the same time, a concurrent class. We do not plan to offer that next year. This was sort of a pandemic only flexibility that we're offering. And we really are trying to get back to normalcy in the 2021-2022 school year. However, we are working on details and program options for families and students who wish to make a full-time commitment to remote learning or online learning, but remain Avon Grove Charter School students. And there's going to be more information about that coming out through the spring here. I don't have a lot of details to share with everybody tonight. We realize and we recognize that is an option that some families might want for next school year. And we're trying to find a way to provide that while not having been an online school ourselves. So I just wanted to add that to tonight's slides. In high school, we do have an add drop period. So there is a period of time throughout the school year where students can change classes. However, school is not a buffet, and we don't always just get to try everything that we want. So there are start and end times to when students can add, drop classes, as well as withdraw from a class without penalty. So if a student's taking a full year class, they can withdraw prior to the 25th day of the class meeting without any penalty. And if it's a semester-based class, they have 10 days of the class meeting before, in which they can withdraw and potentially change classes without having penalty. If it occurs after that specific timeline, students will receive either a WF or a WP on their transcript, withdrawal fail, withdrawal pass, and it's based on the grade that they have at the time of their the grade that they have at the time of their request to withdraw. Typically, what happens is the students requesting a withdrawal without having completed much work in the class, and they receive a WF, and that does impact their grade point average. So that would be, again, like a case where a student is in algebra, 10th grade English. They're enrolled in 10th grade English at the beginning of the school year. And then at the end of November, they say they don't want to take this class anymore. Well, they need it to graduate. That's one thing. You need 10th grade English. But if that were the case, then they would be withdrawing, and we would be looking at what their grade is based on the work that's assigned up to that point of the withdrawal request, and then making a determination of whether that's a WF or a WP grade. Our school also has matriculation agreements with Delaware County Community College, Westchester University, as well as Immaculata for dual enrollment. So this is available to our 11th and 12th grade students. There's a specific list of courses specifically for Delaware County Community College that's included in our program of studies that we accept as transfer and replacement credits. So for example, we have 12th graders who will go to Delaware County Community College and take Delaware County Community College's college like Lit and Composition 100 class in lieu of their 12th grade English class. And we accept that credit back in lieu of their 12th grade English class. But there are specific courses. We also began a partnership with Immaculata last year, where we're offering classes at Avon Grove Charter School after school and during the evenings for college credit. And we actually have our teachers who teach that class. And we're working on additional dual enrollment opportunities for students with the goal to try to have some of our daytime classes certified for sort of a college and high school program. It is extremely important that our students do not just enroll in college classes without speaking to their guidance counselors first, as there's only specific courses that we accept back. Students can't go to Delaware County Community College and take, basket weaving and have that, come back as a transfer credit. There are specific classes that we accept, and our guidance counselors work with our students and our families to identify the appropriate classes. So it's important that paperwork process is done before you go and enroll in those classes if you're an upperclassman. It's also extremely important that students not enroll in dual enrollment courses that start prior to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of our dual enrollment partners don't have classes that run that early. They're mostly night classes. However, in the past, we have had students sign up for a college dual enrollment class without notifying us, and the class started at 11:30 in the morning, and they expected us to try to build them a schedule, a full-time high school schedule that was going to allow them to leave early to be able to go to their 11:30 dual enrollment class. That doesn't really work. So you have to make sure that your students speak with our guidance counselors prior to enrollment to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that they're successful. I had mentioned already that our students in grades 9 through 11 can enroll in one study hall period each semester. Our 12th graders are able to enroll in 2 study halls or apply for senior privilege or a combination of the two. And senior privilege at Avon Grove Charter School means that students can either earn early release or late arrival. So basically what we do is if seniors have flexibility and room in their schedule and they've met all of their graduation requirements and they enroll in their 5 credits that they're required to, they have the ability to potentially have either first period or 8th period open in their schedule where they could come to school late or they could leave school early. There are specific requirements. There are GPA requirements. There's the ability for us to be able to have that flexibility in their schedule. Students have to have their own transportation, as well as a satisfactory attendance record. And that attendance record is an ongoing evaluation throughout their senior year. And they can have their senior privileges revoked if they're having issues with their grades or not coming to school on a regular basis. But it's a nice perk as a senior and something that our underclassmen can look forward to. Finally, just a revisiting of our current bell schedule. So we run an 8-period schedule with high schools all eating during 7th period, which is our lunch and learn period. So all of our high schoolers all eat at the same time. It's very, very good for our teachers who are able to provide remedial support or have clubs and activities meet during that period. That all of our high school students eat at the same time. But that's sort of what the student's day looks like, and where you could see senior privilege for late arrival during period 1. Students wouldn't have to really be to school till 8:30. And then if our seniors have early release, they actually can leave at the beginning of lunch at 12:35. So they can get out pretty early if they have that flexibility in their schedule. Our high school program has a number, this is only a select grouping of them, but a number of student clubs and activities that students can get involved in. And I highly encourage every student should really be involved in at least one extracurricular activity. And if your child's not involved in an extracurricular activity because they don't believe that one exists at Avon Grove Charter School that interests them, I encourage you to have them speak to one of our teachers or our guidance department or our administration, because most of these clubs all develop from an original group of students who brought it to us and said, I want to have a student run choir. I want to start a Tri-M chapter. I want to start a Spanish club. Again, most of the clubs are based on student interest, and really all of our students should be involved in something more than just their academic coursework. So scheduling timelines. So last week we posted to the website the program of studies. That's a big catalog basically of our school policies and procedures in high school, as well as our tentative course offerings. We do ask that because of the current pandemic and because we're still working out, what school is going to look like next year, and evaluating our teaching staff and our student enrollment, that you look at that document as somewhat fluid, and things can change over the next 8 months before next school year starts. But that document is released. We had our 8th grade transition night earlier, the 8th grade transition meeting earlier tonight, and we're at March 8th when we're talking about scheduling. March 1st through the 19th, and Mr. McGregor, this is where your question will come into play. Our teachers are supposed to be meeting with all of their students and communicating with them their recommendations that they're entering into Power School. So how our course selection process works is all of our teachers make core content recommendations for students for the following school year. So our 9th grade English teacher, for example, will go into all of her students' PowerSchool accounts and make a recommendation for their 10th grade English class. Am I recommending college prep? Am I recommending an honors class? Am I recommending a standard level class? And the teachers will be having those conversations, or already are having those conversations with students and letting them know what they believe the next course the student should be taking is, and what level that is, and why. There are also outlined in the program of studies specific prerequisite requirements that students must meet in order to be eligible for certain courses. So if a teacher recommends a college prep level English class, but the student meets the prerequisite requirement for the next honors level English class, they do have the ability to enroll in that honors class. If the teacher's recommending a college prep level English class and the child does not meet the prerequisite requirements for an honors level one, then they would not be able to override the teacher's recommendation. They didn't meet the course prerequisite. There are some instances where we allow teacher recommendations to override course prerequisites, but that is a specific conversation that students would have to have with their teachers and with their guidance counselors. So teacher course recommendations is a part of the scheduling process and a piece of what unlocks course options for students. The other piece that unlocks course options for students is the grades that they get in courses that they're taking. During the week of March 22nd, students will start to complete the schedule request process with their guidance counselors. It typically happens during their social studies class periods. I know we're still working out how this is going to happen during, a COVID pandemic. The students are able to do this remotely. They do it right by logging into their PowerSchool accounts. But in previous years, our guidance counselors pushed into all the students' social studies classes and guided them through the process. Something like that will probably still happen, but our guidance counselors are still trying to work out the logistics of what that looks like while we are in a hybrid instructional model period right now, and we have a lot of students who are remote learning at home. After the students do their initial requests, we have our teachers review those requests. We also review them. We review them in mid-April. We also review them again around the time of final exams. And then during the months of May and July, our administration builds the master schedule for next year. And then in August, schedules are released. So what your students will do during that week of March 22nd is they're going to go into their PowerSchool account and they're going to see over on the left-hand side something that says class registration. And when they click on that, they're going to see a scheduling portal that looks like this. It hasn't changed since 2017-2018. And when they go in, they're going to see all of our disciplinaries, English, science, social studies, and then they're going to see a button that's over on the right that is going to allow them to go in and see the course catalog for that specific content area. So this is our English classes. And they will see what the prerequisites are. They're going to see how many credits things are worth. They're going to see alerts on whether or not they've met prerequisites for certain things. It will tell them it will remind them of how many credits are required for graduation. Again, they're going to see prerequisite information, whether they've met that. They're going to be able to see a list of electives. This is an example of our elective window. Here's an example of their prerequisite notes that, for example, in order for you to choose painting 1, you should have already taken and gotten at least a 71% in drawing 1. Now, the way that PowerSchool is set up is that if your child hadn't enrolled in drawing 1 yet, they would not be able to choose painting 1. So there are sort of gatekeepers set up so that, a 9th grader isn't trying to enroll in, AP calculus as a 9th grader. So it does direct them through the process and what students are eligible for picking. And it will have students choose both primary courses as well as alternative courses. The alternative course options are typically used when primary courses and primary course selections are unable to be fulfilled. So for example, a child might choose Drawing 1 as a primary visual arts elective, and as an alternative, they choose 2D Studio 1. We try to schedule the Drawing 1 class first, but if Drawing 1 doesn't fit into their schedule, then we look to 2D Studio as an alternative. So it's a very simple process. Again, students can do it remotely while they are at home, starting the week of the 22nd, or they're going to be doing it with the help of our guidance counselors. They should be getting information and having conversations with their teachers over the next 2.5 weeks. This might also be a conversation that comes up during parent-teacher conferences this week. If you have a parent-teacher conference scheduled with any of your child's teachers, the teachers are working through their recommendation process over the next couple weeks in preparation for your students to do their selections starting on the 22nd. But it's a very simple process, and there's lots of checks and balances in place, and we do our best again to try to fulfill as high of a yield of requests filled as possible year over year. So that ends sort of the general overview of our course selection process. I know that was a lot of information to take in. And again, I'm going to reiterate that I'm going to be sending out the recording of this, which will be available on the school's YouTube page, as well as posting the slides to the website so that you have all of this information available. At this time, I am going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to stop the live feed, and then start to open it up for any general questions that people may have. Again, I'm going to ask that the questions stay as general as possible. If it's something specific to your student or your child or a situation with your child, that's really best to be addressed individually with the guidance counselors or the school administration. But if there's any general questions about anything that we talked about tonight or anything that I may have missed, happy to stick around for a little while